Hey gamers! Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the Ice Barrier archetype, a deck notorious for its floodgate strategies. With over 10 different floodgates within the archetype and a few extras that can synergize well, we're going to break down and rank them based solely on their floodgate effects. Before we jump into the rankings, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Over 90% of you are still unsubscribed, and if you're craving more Ice Barrier content, you're in the right place. Hope you enjoy. Alright, let's kick things off with the face of Ice Barrier floodgates, General Raiho of the Ice Barrier. While he might be a hard garnet for the deck, Raiho's floodgate effect is absolutely insane. His ability to force your opponent to discard cards or negate their monster effects on the field is a game changer. When paired with Lancea, it becomes even more powerful. So much so that Lancea is often played outside of Ice Barrier decks, as seen in recent OCG events with Mermails. It's no surprise that Raiho is top tier. His floodgate effect can handle almost any matchup and is a real headache for opponents to deal with in the right circumstance. Next up is General Wayne of the Ice Barrier, who brings a rather unique floodgate to the table. While face up, Wayne prevents any spell or trap sent to the opponent's graveyard from going there. Instead, they're banished. This can be a nightmare for decks that recycle their spells and traps, like Runic or Paleo. However, this effect is quite niche and doesn't always come into play. So, while Wayne can be very effective in the right situations, his floodgate is more situational compared to others. Then we have Revealer of the Ice Barrier, which has an even more niche floodgate effect. If you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot tribute summon monsters. This doesn't prevent special summoning that tributes for cost. This can be a major setback for decks like Floowandereeze and Monarchs. The downside is that Revealer doesn't often make it onto the field, unless you're certain you're up against tribute-heavy strategies. And Lancea is useless if your opponent isn't special summoning, which can't let you access to Revealer. Overall, Revealer's floodgate is extremely situational, even more so than Wayne's. Moving on to Speaker for the Ice Barrier, whose floodgate effect is somewhat mediocre. If you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent's defense position monsters cannot change their battle position. This could be useful in theory, especially against flip effect decks. However, there are usually better floodgate options available, so Speaker's effect is not something I'd rely on heavily. Next up, we have Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier. Hexa's floodgate effect lowers your opponent's monster's attack and defense by 500 if you control another Ice Barrier monster. In practice, though, Hexa is typically used as synchro material or tribute fodder for Mirror Mage. With Chengying offering a similar effect, but as a big body with protection and removal, Hexa's floodgate just doesn't measure up. It's pretty lackluster and not worth relying on. Just use it as synchro or Mirror Mage fodder instead. Now we have two of the most talked about floodgates in the Ice Barrier archetype, Spellbreaker of the Ice Barrier and Warlock of the Ice Barrier. Let's start with Warlock. This card has a powerful effect where, if you control another Ice Barrier monster, both players must set their spells and can only activate them the turn after they're set. Think of it as a walking anti-spell fragrance. It's a fantastic way to slow down your opponent's spell-based plays. Now, Spellbreaker brings something similar to the table, but with a twist. It has an ignition effect, where you discard an Ice Barrier monster to prevent both players from activating spell cards until the end of your next turn. It's essentially a built-in Imperial Order. So, which one is better? For me, it comes down to stats and usability. Warlock, while powerful, has pretty weak attack and defense stats, making it easy for opponents to beat over. Plus, its awkward level 3 means it can't pair well with Georges for synchro plays, or Speaker for rank 4S. On the other hand, Spellbreaker boasts solid stats with 2,000 defense points and is a level 4, which makes it versatile for level 10 synchros with Georges or rank 4S with Speaker. Spellbreaker can lock out spells by itself, and Revealer can act as a discard cost in the graveyard. Warlock, however, needs another Ice Barrier on the field to maintain its effect. So, by the time you get it out, your opponent might have already resolved some spells. Overall, while Warlock can be useful, Spellbreaker is definitely the superior spell floodgate in this deck. Warlock has its place, but you might be better off sticking with Spellbreaker, or skipping these options entirely. Now, let's talk about Medium of the Ice Barrier. This card also deals with spells, but with a catch. While Medium is face up on the field, your opponent can only activate and resolve one spell or trap effect. Yes, you have to let one resolve, which can be a bit of a gamble. Its other effect allows you to special summon it from your hand if your opponent controls 4 or more cards than you. It's worth noting this is an inherent summon. While Medium's special summon effect is handy when going second, making sure it's not a dead draw, its Floodgate effect is weaker compared to Warlock and Spellbreaker. Allowing one spell or trap to resolve can still give your opponent the chance to break your board. Additionally, being a level 7 is quite awkward for synergy with synchro plays, as not many tuners pair well with 7S. So, while Medium is usable, its drawbacks keep it from being top tier in the Ice Barrier lineup. It's worth considering, but definitely not at the same level as Spellbreaker. Alright, let's move on to Georgius, Swordman of the Ice Barrier. This card is an excellent extender and boasts a surprisingly strong Floodgate effect. While you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent can't activate monster effects from the graveyard. This is essentially an in-archetype Abyss Dweller, making it one of the best floodgates and cards in the deck. Georgius pairs exceptionally well with Lancia and can help revive a starter for follow-up plays in the next turn. It's especially useful in Ice Barrier mirror matches, where shutting down graveyard effects can be a game changer. Next up is Defender of the Ice Barrier, a level 3 tuner with a unique effect. If you control another Ice Barrier monster, any monsters with equal or higher attack than Defender cannot attack you. On paper, this could be handy against specific matchups like Tenpai when it eventually hits Master Duel. And being a level 3, it pairs with Hexa to make Prima Donna. However, adding another Garnet just for one matchup doesn't seem worth it, especially when Tenpai already struggles against Ice Barrier with Spellbreaker. Defender's reliance on Lancia also makes it vulnerable if your opponent removes it. Overall, it's a very niche pick, and not something I'd prioritize. Cryomancer is essentially a less effective version of Defender, as its Floodgate affects both players. Plus, we already have enough level 2 tuners, so Cryomancer is just another niche option. Borderline bad, in my opinion. Now, Mirror Judge of the Ice Barrier is easily the worst card in the archetype. I'm not even going to bother with the Floodgate effect. Just trust me, it's not worth your time. Finally, we have Secret Guards of the Ice Barrier. This card provides targeted protection from monsters for your Ice Barriers, but in today's meta, it feels too specific and outdated to be of much use. Alright, let's wrap up with some Floodgates that aren't part of the Ice Barrier archetype, but can still be played within it. First up is the Water Barrier Statue. This card locks both players into special summoning only water attribute monsters. It's a powerful tool, but summoning it is a bit tricky. You'll need to use Prima Donna if your opponent has a banished card. This strategy is mainly for Ice Barrier runic variants, where some of the runic spells banish your opponent's cards. While the Water Barrier Statue can potentially end games, it often feels like a win more card. In a runic deck, you're already spending a lot of deck space on the runic package on top of the Ice Barriers, not leaving you with a lot of non-engine space. Going second, it's also a dead draw, and with Raiho, you're essentially playing 2 Garnets in a runic deck, which isn't ideal. Overall, it's a usable card that raises the ceiling, but it just feels overkill, and you should probably just use that card slot for a non-engine card instead. Next is Gozen Match. This continuous trap is quite useful since the entire Ice Barrier deck is water attribute. However, in the current format, locking your opponent to one attribute doesn't have a huge impact on its own. While it can lock their extra deck, many top decks run just one attribute anyway, like Yubel. Gozen Match might become a more viable option in future formats, but for now, you might be better off with other choices. Finally, we have There Can Only Be One. This card isn't commonly run in Ice Barrier decks because while we can play under it, certain cards share types like Spellcasters, Dragons, and Aqua. This can lead to awkward situations in the long game, and the deck doesn't have ways to remove your trap Floodgate on their own unless you add outside support. Similar to Gozen Match, this card could be more effective in future formats, but right now, it's not essential. And that's a wrap on my Floodgate tier list. Of course, this isn't set in stone. Meta shifts and new cards could change things up. If you have any disagreements or thoughts, let me know in the comments. This is just my perspective, so your experience might vary. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.